My name is Emin Husseinov. I'm Executive Director of Institute for Reporters Freedom and Safety. Today, our organization is basically a sponsorship of the Maurizio Buccarelli, Italian Senator, and Mr. Peter Onzig from Netherlands. Both MPs hosted this event, which is named Zero Corruption for Better Future of Council of Europe. Because today we believe, after 10 years experience, main problem for all stakeholders in this house is huge corruption. And I would love to introduce our moderator, Paola Crofolini from Open Dialogue Foundation. She is advocacy officer from Brussels-based international human rights organizations. And I give it floor to her for moderate, and she can introduce all our speakers and sponsors and to this side. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I will just make a brief introduction before giving the floor to our speakers. So today's event we will try to investigate and to tackle concrete questions related to the upcoming elections of the Secretary General and the link between human rights violations and corruption and the democratic and rule of law values of the Council of Europe. So in these recent years, the Council of Europe has been shaken by several corruption scandals. So there were a number of striking examples which have weakened the Council of Europe mission of promotion of human rights, democracy, and the fight against corruption. Let me just recall a few striking examples, as for example, the scandal related to caviar diplomacy or the Azerbaijani laundromat, which were aimed at preventing critical reports on the human rights situation, the situation of political prisoners in Azerbaijan, and to internationally legitimize unfair elections. So there were investigations carried out by the Secretary General about these scandals, but with the upcoming election of the Secretary General, we expect to eradicate the complete eradication of corruption scandals and practices here in the Council of Europe. So, together with our guest, anti-corruption activist, anti-corruption journalist, a member of BASE, we will try to tackle questions related to the link between corruption, human rights violations, and these elections. So we will try to answer to the following questions, as for example, how these candidates will strengthen the Council of Europe raison d'etre, and what kind of reforms, what kind of standards they will put into force to prevent such kleptocratic regime as, for example, Azerbaijan, to manipulate the Council of Europe values. So I would first give the floor to Italian Senator Maurizio Buccarella. He's a member of the PACE delegation. He has actively engaged in support of political prisoners in defense of human rights. For some introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a few words to say that when I've been asked by Mr. Husseinov to sponsor this event, I didn't hesitate a single minute, knowing well the activity of the organization of the Institute for Reporters Freedom and Safety, and knowing exactly what happened here in the Council of Europe a few years ago. I'm referring to the great scandal of corruption within the Parliamentary Assembly, born somehow from one of the countries belonging to the Council, the Azerbaijan. So I'm quite interested in listening what the speakers will say and what any question will be posed later, being sure that what is in common between us all, and hopefully for those who are and will watch a video recording of this event, is the absolute dedication of the scope of fighting the corruption everywhere, and mostly here in the most delicate places, let's say, like the Council of Europe. So I just give time to the speakers, and then we'll try at the end to summarize somehow what the inputs will be. I see that is just joined us Senator Rampi, an Italian senator. I'm glad to see you. And so I go back the voice to you for the follow-up.
Yes, and also thank you to Matteo Angeli from Radical Party for joining us. So now it's the turn of Emin Husseinov. He's a prominent journalist from Azerbaijan. He's a co-founder of Institute for Reporters' Freedom and Safety. So please.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Mr. Arena. I would like to say also many thanks also to all base members which have supported our efforts for prevent corruptions in this important international institution. Because for a country like Azerbaijan, which is not member of EU, Council of Europe, it's last hope for dozens, thousands victims, which is not able to receive justice in own country, and for last hope for them is European Court of Human Rights, politicians which is represented here. But unfortunately, sometimes we lose these hopes, because in 2013, when one of your colleagues, Mr. Strasser from Socialist Group, German MP, prepared very important for Azerbaijan and heartbreaking report about political prisoners. Another MPs, on like strong coordination with Azerbaijani politicians, which is also represented in our delegations, organized one of the dirtiest, I say, and shameful campaign to prevent, to silence the voices of the victims, which has spent years unfairly in Azerbaijani prisons. And after this, many of our Azerbaijani colleagues, we start to believe it's something going wrong on this house. And it's also something going wrong after, as like Paolo said before, after unfair and non-democratic elections in countries like Azerbaijan and other post-Soviet countries of the Council of Europe, like especially, again, I'm responsible for my country, and we know since from 2008, when I started first my advocacy trip to this house, we always informed MPs, Secretary General Cabinet, and all other stakeholders here about violations with human rights and democracy. And after, when we received the resolutions, some brave politician which is initiated motions for resolutions or initiated report, and other ones just very easily prevent this effort. We sometimes spend few years from promoting and advocating for these voices, and someone with envelopes which have a couple of thousand, dozens thousand, or millions of dollars, they are distributed here between few politicians and prevent all of this human rights advocacy. And after we think we need to start to look to them, how this happened. And finally, we find solutions together with investigative journalist community, together with whistleblowers. Finally, we are make clear pictures. And thanks again for political will of the Secretary General Jagland, which is their appointed independent investigative body, which is examined or make quite long-term investigations and publish this report. And after this report, we saw some positive steps. But from another time, we still believe, for this report only looks part of the iceberg. Many dirty games which has happened here in different institutions still not investigated deeply. And that's why we believe after very difficult period with this scandal, next and future leadership of the Council of Europe should continue to fight with these issues. Otherwise, the millions of populations which live in the 47 member states of the Council of Europe lose the chances and hopes to fight for its freedoms and for justice. Today, I'm always looking to Paula. Just tell me if I'm close, like 7 minutes, just like. Today, it's very important issues to name again for still many of political prisoners in Azerbaijan, which is staying in the prison since from 2013. Some of them until today imprisoned. Some of them released, but the government played like revolving door game. They released someone and arrested new victims, and we believe for today it's very good chance for all civil society to push the authoritarian leaders, and especially for oil-rich countries like Azerbaijan, which is sometimes Western community close their eyes for all violations, what's happened in my country. I'm very critical about position of some European institutions, because today Azerbaijan prepared to ratify a strategical agreement between European Commission and Azerbaijan, and we try to use opportunity to say here for Azerbaijan not ready for sign this strategical agreement, and we strongly supported European Parliament resolutions, which is just a few months ago adopted with absolute majority, which is named with my imprisoned brother Mehman Hussein, which is also a human rights defender and anti-corruption activist, and others, dozens of victims. But today, for example, Mehman Hussein is not able to came there and make his speech. Now we, but thanks for my colleagues, which is staying with us here. Again, the issues with corruption, it's very serious issues, because if you don't prevent these issues here, all dirty lobbies, they're broken lives of the 100,000 people in my country. And this is not only issues with these political prisoners. If you look, you can imagine of the size of this stolen assets, which is our ruling regime take from our state budget, from taxpayers' pocket. And today's chance for us also asking European leadership to thinking and care about these issues, and thinking how to return these stolen assets back to Azerbaijan, back to Russia, back to Moldova. If you look to this recent scandal, which is named Azerbaijan Landromat, and this is a story which is quite famous in 2017, more than $200 billion transferred from Azerbaijan, Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, via Western banking system to offshore-based bank accounts. And many of these countries also members of EU and members of Council of Europe. And when we started talking about issues with human rights, with European stakeholders like European Commission says, why you're not show your strong positions? They say, we are very dependent from Azerbaijan, energy resources. We are looking to Azerbaijan as a strategical partner. And we always say, we are happy if Azerbaijan biggest trade partner is European Union. We have completely clear vision for our social and economic integration with EU, with Council of Europe member states. But it's unacceptable for us just play with human rights and democracy values and close eyes for all violations which has happened in our countries. And again, thanks for politicians, which is like Mr. Bukarela, Mr. Omzik, many of our allies in European Parliament, they are always supported. Without this support, we can't manage to bring our people from prison. But back to Council of Europe, next Secretary General, I just want to say for now we have only 2 candidates. Yesterday we met with them. INGO conference organized informal discussions with 2 candidates for Secretary General. You know, for previously they have 2 of them. And committee ministers appointed finally only 2 candidates. 4 previous candidates, 2 of them not appointed. 1 person, a former minister from Lithuania, is not crossed the final steps. And Madame Theodora Bakorianis, which looks like very good friend of Azerbaijani ruling regime, she's also not crossed the final border on this very important position. Because for me it's clear, for politicians which play with dictators, they don't have moral rights to represent in institution which is responsible for 47 member states. And today we address next questions regarding the corruptions, regarding potential affiliations with any unethical and unclear relations with authoritarian states to 2 Secretary General candidates. We asked them already about issues about corruptions yesterday, and thanks for them for their partly response us, but we don't have chance to speak with them a couple of hours or interviewing them. But as one of my activities in investigative journalism, we are preparing to be together with our colleagues. Long list of the questions to Secretary General candidates, and we hope their response to these questions as soon as possible in the next upcoming months, and before summer session, when with secret ballot votings the members of Parliamentary Assembly start to vote, we will distribute this response regarding our important questions between MPs, between civil society leadership, between all stakeholders, and between populations of the Council of Europe member states. And finally, we also try to do some kind of interactive online voting for 47 member states by population by Twitter, Facebook, and maybe YouTube, just to give alternative platform what people say, things about the Secretary General. And we believe for PACE members make better choice, and we're looking forward for work with next Council of Europe leadership, and we asking equal rights for civil society, for strongly cooperate and prevent all negative efforts. Thanks again, and I'm so sorry for my long speech.
Thank you, Amin, for your message. Now we have Violeta Muscalu. She's an activist and she's head of board of Global Ukraine Foundation. She will have a short presentation, PowerPoint presentation. Please.
Thank you very much. I am a doctor in management sciences of Lorraine University in France, and actually also working on Global Ukrainians network, trying to help the civil society and democratic reforms in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, Min, for your invitation. I would wish to underline the main issue, I think, in this on this topic on future of Council of Europe, how to obtain zero corruption, boosted human rights and democracy. The title of this short presentation is a little bit provocative, but you will see that we have facts and statistics for this. Plutocracy versus democracy, the biggest issue for the future of Council of Europe. Next slide, please. I took like the basic point, the index, democracy index of the Economist Intelligence Unit that had scored 167 countries from 0 to 10 based on 60 indicators, and they show like all these countries in 4 categories. You can see some countries like full democracies, flawed democracies, hybrid regimes, and authoritarian regimes. This index, democracy index, is based on 5 categories. Electoral process of pluralism, civil liberties, the functioning of government, political participation, and political culture. And it's interesting to look on the different countries of Council of Europe and to understand that we have different categories of countries, of governance systems, and we have maybe to be much more attentive on this, on these issues, and to try to understand which kind of KPIs, if you can use it, to use to help the countries from the category like hybrid regimes or authoritarian regimes, to ask them to obtain some improvements. Because, for example, Azerbaijan or Russian Federation, who are really very, very low on this index of democracy, and we have, like Emin explained, all the big problems of human rights, and we actually also know the problems Russia actual problems with annexion of Crimea, with war in Donbass, with different political prisoners also, and all this hybrid war also against the European Union. And it's very strange to see that we have the same policy and politics toward all our countries who are members of, which are members of Council of Europe. For example, you can also have a look like, is it possible to develop next, no, sorry, before. Here, like for example, you can see the index of Azerbaijan and Russia. Back. And in here, yeah, you can look on the different categories, and it looks like it's really a very strong issue to put it in the center of the priorities for the next General Secretary and for the different institutions here in PACE, because we have to find new approaches and new strategies how to help this the civil society in these countries to develop stronger institutions and to move forward real democracy. Next, please. For example, we can compare just the difference between different post-Soviet countries, like Baltic countries here. And next, please. Here, for example, you can see the category of hybrid regimes. And in case of Moldova, Anna will explain later. And next, please. And we already saw Azerbaijan and Russia like really very strong authoritarian regimes. So different issues, next slide please, different issues, critical issues from the political sciences. For example, we have distinction between predatory state-society relationship and developing state-society relationship. There are definitely some very strong governance issues for countries who develop a kind of predatory state-society relationship. A second issue, a strong migration crisis, because humans leave their home countries for better life abroad, and it's like voting by fee. because in these countries we still have very weak civil society, very weak elite renewal, and it's difficult for them to switch from kind of predatory mentality, from kind of conservative mentality of ruling elites to more developing mentality. And this point should be treated with much more attention, and to try to find some new ideas and to put some new priorities on the top of the list for future leadership of Council of Europe. Another critical issue, unfair distribution of resources, lack of trust, hate speech, poverty in all these countries. And finally, we are all concerned because we can't say that it's not our problem, because this migration, for example, crisis, it's a very strong problem also for Europe. And we have now a very strong crisis of neoliberal ideology, crisis of the representative democracy. So it's definitely something to be analyzed very carefully, and to find new ideas for new reality. Stronger focus on human rights, a real fight against kleptocracy, and the examples we will also have, we will develop here. Use of Global Magnitsky Act, reverse burdens of proofs, for example, for all these financial crimes. When we say 200 billion, like it's really incredible. More humanism, more social responsibility for all kind of political and geopolitical decisions, and very important point is also to think about the needed reforms of the Council of Europe institutions in order to strengthen the financial autonomy of the Council of Europe, to prevent kleptocratic regimes from manipulating the Council of Europe. So we hope that the future General Secretary will be able to take very seriously all these issues, and we are ready also to help to develop some new approach, some new paradigm in order to save the Council of Europe from destruction, because the danger of all these kleptocratic states is really very, very strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Violeta. And as you mentioned, certainly the Global Magnitsky Act is one of the tools that we should implement in the Council of Euro area, and we already presented some testimonies and expertise with during this session. But now I would like to give the floor to Anna Orsaki. She's a prominent human rights defender. She's a lawyer, and she has been fighting in her country an oligarchy regime, and for this reason she is now being persecuted. So if you could please tell a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I will try to be short, because I think we are running out of time a little bit, and I want you to be involved in the discussion with us. But, well, I'm indeed not coming from an oil-rich country, as I mean from Azerbaijan, but contrary to the opinion of Council of Europe, which gave the score from 6-4 to our country and named Moldova hybrid regime, I can say that I'm coming from a country with the authoritarian regime. We have an oligarch who captured our state from 2014, ironically the same year when Moldova has signed an association agreement with the European Union. And since that time, we are really fighting biggest cases of corruption, because $1 billion has been stolen from our national reserve, and Moldova is unfortunately on the second level after Azerbaijan in the Landrovat case, when more than $20 billion were laundered through our banks, and were involved in this big scandal relating to Danske Bank, to Norwegian, to Swedish banks, to Deutsche Bank, to all these banks which were used by the oligarchic and kleptocratic regimes in order to launder the money and to make them disappear on the benefits of oligarchs and dictators who are supporting their power on the base of the stolen money. Unfortunately, these tactics also allow oligarchs and here I'm speaking about my country, to make a dirty lobby in the European institution. And it's a big risk and it's a big concern that we want to raise here, because if we are speaking about the future of the Council of Europe, and we understand that, for example, my country is a member of Council of Europe, and we could really have efficient tools to increase the positive score of our fight against corruption and against huge human rights violations that have happened now in our country. We need politicians from the European community, from the Council of Europe, to be strong and to be anti-corrupt, and not to be manipulated, and not to be well, bought by the dirty money. Even a kind of idea of support of perpetrators should be stopped, because since huge human rights violations are supported somehow under the blind eye of European community or under Council of Europe, people in our countries perceive with the same negative image the European community as they perceive their offenders in countries like Azerbaijan, like Moldova, Russia, and Kazakhstan. For example, advocating here in Council of Europe, I heard on the case of Kazakhstan, I know a lot of stories when people and victims are speaking frankly with politicians on different sides when they are presenting documents and evidences of the fact that people are dying in prisons there, and they are put in prisons just because of free protests, for example, or because their regimes are hunting some political oppositioners in Kazakhstan. On the other side, just an ambassador could enter freely and could speak with any of MPs and could manipulate only because in the general perception, human rights defenders, prisoners, victims, they have less tools than politicians, than governments. They can enter everywhere, they can have your attention. But we can use only such kind of events, only press, only our freedom of speech, and we are under the risk since we are fighting them, because we are fighting only with our, I don't know, views, our efforts, which are our minds, and we are fighting against money and the dirty lobby, which is a common risk for all European institutions, because now we are talking about not only Council of Europe election, but future European Parliament election, and the same problem persists there. So I think our message is perfectly clear. We need to have a new leadership, like a lot of really efficient members of Council of Europe, or Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, or members of European Parliament, who were already involved in different big projects in order to help and to increase the fight of the human rights defenders against huge violations in our countries. And we should be able to minimize the possibility for corrupt people to enter in the high position in such institution as Council of Europe, because since we will have on your side support from the anti-corrupt politicians, we will survive, and if not, we will not survive. We have an example of our colleague Ludmila Kozlovska, who was banned from travel in EU in order to stop her activity, just because my country provided absolutely fake accusations based on this classic propaganda about Russia. We have Transnistria and Moldova. Everybody understood that Moldova is under some kind of risk to be totally brought to the Russian interest. So just because this label, Russian risk of Russia of Russian hybrid war, risk of Russian influence in different post-Soviet countries. Just using this kind of label, our oligarchic and dictatorship regimes are manipulating here. And some kind of answers should be given to the question why you are persecuting human rights defenders, why you are persecuting lawyers, journalists. The government will respond, oh my God, no, we are not persecuting. You should be silent, please, politicians, because otherwise Russian tanks will come, otherwise hybrid wars will begin, and something like this. So propaganda and manipulating is the sister of the dirty lobby. And since authoritarian regimes are using this, we should deny this kind of influence totally. I have no idea what I should, for example, ask from a concrete candidate, because I have no possibility to vote for him or for her properly. But expressing the will of citizens of my country, or human rights defenders like us, journalists and different experts who are for years working in this field, we clearly know that we want a person who is far away from the even idea of corruption, of some kind of possibility to discuss on the same level with an offender or perpetrator. They could not be let even to enter in European institution. Well, I promised to be short, and well, that's a problem for a lawyer. So maybe we are really open to discuss and to have open discussion by your question.
Thank you, Anna. And indeed, such dictators from Moldova, from Kazakhstan, from Russia, from Azerbaijan are indeed global dictators. They have a criminal network worldwide. So through principles in new leadership, we have to urgently tackle this issue. And so I would like to invite Senator Bucarella for the concluding remarks, and then we can pass to the Q&A session. Thanks.
Well, I think that the most important thing is to looking forward, and going back to the point stressed by Eamon before in this speech, is to find out how and in which way the candidates for the role of Secretary General can fulfill the achievements was on the Council of Europe. I mean, looking at the questions
what we expect from
that we can read on here, it would be very interesting to find out if and when, but I'm sure it will happen, you and the other NGO will have some answer, some feedback from the candidates in a very transparent way, in a very peaceful and clear way, to have some clear positions from them about what kind of instruments that can be even can touch somehow the regulatory life of this council, can strengthen the instrument itself to fight corruption, together with the defending the human rights in all the 47 countries. So that will be the biggest question, and probably will give us the opportunity to find a date in the next session of the plenary session of the Council of Europe to have some answer, and hoping that we can be reassured, assured that the goal of the Council of Europe, the defending of the human rights and the fight against the corruption, will find some more hope and more strong position, even from the member of the executive body of this organization. So that will be an occasion to say we will meet again in the next months, in the next weeks, and maybe we'll find out more and find a way to continue our fight, our struggle. Now, I don't know if you want to give time to any questions, if any.
We have 15 minutes.
Yes, exactly. So we can open the Q&A session. We are perfectly on time. Please.
Thank you. My name is Hunter Circle from Estonia. I have the question to Mr. Hussein. Let's take the covert diplomacy and the Laundromat case, which was worked out here. What concretely do you think what was in the hands of the Secretary General of Council of Europe? What Mr. Jarnot didn't do, and what the new Secretary General in the probably similar situation must do? And the second question, because the Laundromat report would be in the hemicycle right now, is what happened in Azerbaijan after this story, because there are a lot of names who received some money, including Azeri officials, not only members of Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. And there's also something I didn't know about restriction of the public access to information about the registration and ownership of Azeri companies. Is something changed? Thank you.
Thank you for important questions, Mr. Hertel. If Mr. Hertel have a long-term experience with observations on issues of human rights and democracy in Azerbaijan, but now, regarding the questions of the Secretary General, what we should need to do more on this investigation. I think this investigation covering only parliamentarians. But I'm not Secretary General, but if I'm like investigators, I need to investigate all stakeholders, even judges in European Court for Human Rights, even committee ministers members, even like from everyone, started from Secretary General until like head of the desk, which is somehow, or people from his staff somehow maybe involved to but it's very long-term process, and for me it's understandable for with less budget, with less technical possibilities, and with less time, they start with doing only with parliamentarians. But again, we're talking about all institutions of the Council of Europe should be accountable, including even civil society. Started from myself until all other civil society actually should be transparent. Anyone needs to know everything about everyone, and know any questions about accountabilities. Just everyone should declare everything, and after we are moving forward. But today we saw for some kind of like with parliamentarians. The parliamentarians, now I know how much is your salaries and salaries of the Mr. Bucharel. But for the I will check also salaries of my MPs, and I know for half of the his illegal assets connected with his spouses. And again, if corruption is issues when somebody going to elections, for example, for presidential election, you need to declare not only his own incomes, also his spouse, wives, or husband incomes. That is maybe better to do also for the future for the parliamentarians and also for all executive body members here. Regarding the general investigation, as I said, it's only top of the iceberg. I'm not like legal investigator, but even I'm investigative journalist, and sometimes we know more than investigators. But I don't have like even chances. I have many things to do in my own country. I have dozens victims which is daily tortured there, and it's not my business to work and investigate politicians. We just ask the questions, and we ask stakeholders to do this. Regarding the company ownership, since from 2012, the Azerbaijani government changed the law to access to information. It's one of the wrongest violations to our obligation in front of the Council of Europe. And this has happened after a series of the investigations, which is shows for presidential family. like president, wife, his daughters and sons involved with these corruptions and high-level officials. And Khadija Ismailov, Radio Liberty, and other brave journalists investigated these activities, and since from 2010 until 2012. In 2012, the door is closed. Now we didn't able to even ask who is owner of this. We didn't even not able to ask who is the owner or how money circulated in the Haidar Aliyev Foundation, which is also NGO, but it's biggest NGO which is operated with billions. And sometimes our government using corruption also by these NGOs. They're using like this transfer money to Mr. Valonte to his NGO, which is based in Milano in Italy. Luca Valonte.
Volonté.
Yeah, Luca Valonte.
Volonté.
Volonte. Yeah, and they sometimes using like NGOs for these dirty corrupted games. And again, now we don't have access to anything in my country, and we asking you and other politicians to force to, because the role of the Parliamentary Assembly asks the countries to implement all obligations. And now we have a very long list of violations which is our country start to do against independent media, against freedom of information, against freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and associations. But you need to just examine it Azerbaijan again, much more stronger.
Other questions from the audience?
Can I have a think about Moldova on the same question? Because no proper investigation was conducted in Moldova on this 22 laundered billions of dollars. And we are still waiting for the responses. And based on the big case which came from Azerbaijan, we found that, again, Moldovan investigative journalists, not prosecutors, found that in Great Britain, it was a decision of the Supreme Court that had opened the information to the shareholders in these offshore companies, where probably this money might be hidden. But in Moldova we have the same situation with the stolen billion, and we had a report crawl which already investigated everything and opened it also the name, and our government refused to publish that. So we have, for example, no hope that we will find the truth about 22 billion of laundered money, since we already were some kind of rejected of the information about one stolen, in another case, billion. As to the Secretary General, Mr. Jagland, related to Moldova, I should express my gratitude to Mr. Jagland because in 2015 he stated that Moldova is a captured state, and it was a kind of primary message that helped us to bring into attention of European community what's happening in Moldova. That's why we need that the next Secretary General should be very precise in the declaration, and not so much diplomacy. So and again, never ever to exclude the possibility to speak with the offenders and with the dictators.
I just want to add one thing. So our current president, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, is also head of the Azerbaijan delegation in Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe between 2001 and 2003. He started political career here, and some of the leadership of the Parliamentary Assembly or also former Secretary Generals promoting him and give him credits, public credits. Well, this is a very brave guy, he's spoken 4 languages. Yes, maybe Ilham Aliyev's English finance than mine, my English is poorest, but it's not issues if the guy speaks like fluently in 4 languages. He's able to took billions of his own people. And again, today the story started since from first day in membership of when we are appointed as like full members. Azerbaijan triple times changed the constitutions, and all of these changes focused on the prolongated of the kleptocracy in Azerbaijan and authoritarian ruling possibilities for Aliyev, and today we see for it's unprecedented for us when person staying on the fourth presidential terms, when he's appointed his wife to vice president positions, and this first practice started in Azerbaijan. And you should be careful and always check the governments, because the corruption is not only when it's distributed money, it's corruption which is when it's openly violated these rules and values of the Council of Europe and obligations in front of the Council of Europe, and nobody asking them. And my question is, why you are not asking them for, if you want to be there in the Council, you should respect and play according to the rules. Thanks a lot, and sorry for long.
Other questions? No more questions?
Just hope that we can do something.
So we
or anyone have 1 minute, you can say something. We have 4 minutes. No, please. I'm already speaking now.
You will run out of time.
Okay. So we can conclude here our side event, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.